Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. In today's video, I am sharing this month's Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit. I have several items from the main kit and I have a ton of add-ons to share with you as well. Stamps, dies, and stencils. The theme of this month at Hero Arts is Color Your World with Friendship. So I have a ton of cards to share with you today. I want to dive right in and I'll share the products as we go. First up, I want to share some stamps and dies from the main kit. This 4x6 stamp set features some really nice positive sentiments, which I absolutely love. And the die set has two hands that come together to create a heart and big puffy love letters. So I'm going to cut out those love letters out of white cardstock. I'm going to keep the hands attached and I'm going to cut them out of the top right hand corner of an A2 piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to stamp one of the sentiments in black ink at the bottom of my card. So the love letters, I'm going to swipe right on the ink pad of Reactive inks. So since there's so many cards today, I am going to speed a lot up. I'm just going to share some basic ideas and a few little techniques like this. So swiping those puffy letters on these colors of Reactive inks, which I will link to in the YouTube description box below the video, just gives a fun, almost 80s vibe to them that I really, really like. And the sentiment says, all colors are beautiful. So I love this rainbow, love the sentiment, and I love the hands that create the heart at the top. And I matted this on an A2 piece of black cardstock after cutting down the panel to 4 by 5 1/4. I did want to add a little bit more. So the cool thing that you can do with Reactive inks is swipe them on a mat and then use some water to create some basic watercolor out of them. And I'm using the tiny little mini watercolor brushes from Hero Arts to just turn those hands into rainbows themselves so that we have the rainbows on the love and the rainbows on the hands as well. So you can see I just, with each color that I used on the love, I'm also swiping it on my glass mat and then adding a little bit of water, just a tiny bit, because I'm not working on watercolor cardstock. And that's why those tiny little brushes are great as well, because you're not gonna get the paper pilling up too much since you're not using too much water. The next set is called Better Together. There are the stamps and the dies, and I just wanted to share with curly hair that you can actually add that texture to the hair by making little curly cues on it and then adding in darker colors of the same pattern and then blending them out with the lighter color on top. This way you get a curly look to that hair. And then for the red hair, I'm just doing some lines in the darker color. Again, that just adds a little bit of texture to the hair. I'll do the same for the blonde, and then for the scarf, I am just going to color it in with a nice BG. I thought that was a really pretty scarf color. So just adding some different colors of skin to the parts that are visible, and then using the dies to cut it out, using some purple tape to hold it in place so I can run it through my die cut machine and cut these friends out. There was a little bit of white at the bottom and I didn't want that to show, so I'm using the same colors that I used for their shirts or skirts or dresses to extend that coloring down to the bottom, and you'll see why once we place it on the card. I'm going to use the Rays of Color stencil, and I'm going to use some pixie spray to hold it in place. Put a bunch on there because the lines are so thin. I really don't want them to be pulled around or pulled up while I'm trying to ink blend on top. I am using the Tim Holtz domed foam blenders for this because I really want a nice opaque bright coverage of the ink. The Reactive inks do blend beautifully and they also go down nice and smoothly, but as I was going through, I wasn't sure how much of each color I was going to add. So the way that I dealt with that was I put my first layer down, and then once I saw that I liked how everything was looking, I went back and I did a second blend, and you can see that that really covered up any spots that I missed, blended out the colors in between each other, and then just pull off that stencil and check out those nice bright white lines where the pixie spray held it in place. I am going to to cut this down to an A2, but I'm going to do it horizontally so you can see all of those colors. And then I did cut it down even more so I can mat it on the black. So you can see how I extended the coloring on the girls' dresses and skirts so that they could go all the way down to the bottom of the card there. And I am going to use a sentiment from the same stamp set that says, "You are a great friend," for that card. For the next card, I'm going to use the Sun Flare die, which cuts out all these wavy sun flares. And I am using blending brushes this time to blend on, again, the reactive inks. I'm just using the pink and the orange. And I actually, oh, and I also added the yellow, sorry about that. And then I placed them on a light pink color of cardstock. So you get actual another color in there because the rays do not butt up against each other exactly right next to each other. So you can see you leave a little space in between that allows you to get that fourth color or another color in there. I'm going to trim this down a little bit just because the way I placed it didn't always perfectly sit where it was supposed to. And then I'm going to use the Color Me Words stamp set. It has those circles and then it has all these tiny little sentiments that I thought were perfect for these sun flares. So I took a bunch of really positive messages and then the circle says "You are," which I'm going to cut out with just a plain circle die. And then I am going to use a brush to just tap some of the sparkly white watercolor Hero Arts paint right on top just to add a little bit of shine here on these. And once that's done, I'm going to pop up the "You Are" on a foam square. And I love this card. This would be so nice to receive in the mail, don't you think? It's just such a positive message and such a great one for a good friend. So for the next card, I'm going to use the Paper Hug stamps and dies. You get the two arms, a left and a right, and then you get a hug die as well, and then you get a stamp set that has really great hug sentiments. So I cut the arms out of an A2 panel of white cardstock and they fold back so they don't cut at the end of the arm. I also cut them out of that peachy color and I cut off the arms there so that I can layer them on top of the white. I did stamp the sentiment before I started layering everything, just making sure I got that sentiment in there, and then I'm using tape runner to adhere these arms on top of the ones that are in the panel itself so that I can have a white background and I can also have arms with a skin color. Then I took a circle die, cut out a blue circle, and these cardstock colors are all from the little sampler pack from Hero Arts that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So cut out that circle and then I cut out the hug out of yellow and layered it on top. And now I'm putting some cardstock on the panel underneath the arms where this circle is going to go. So I just lined that all up and stuck it in there, and now I flipped it over. Don't put any adhesive on the back of the arms, and this way they can open and close. So you can see they fold open, and you have to enforce the score line there a little bit so that they really can open up wide and give that hug, and then you can close them up and put them in an envelope and it says "Sending a Big Hug." For the next card, I'm going to use the Rainbow Window Fancy die. I've cut it out of white cardstock and I've cut parts of it out of different colors of cardstock from that sampler pack that I mentioned. And I'm going to cut the rainbow rays out of these 3 different colors. I have a pink, an orange, and a blue here so that I can add a little bit of adhesive behind the rays and then layer them on top of the white to create the rainbows. So the window itself is going to stay white and the little clouds are going to stay white, but the rainbows will be this combination of pink, orange, and blue. And I love the way this looks on there. So I'm going to use some Hero Arts Reactive ink in Sea Salt. That's a nice white reactive ink. And I put it on a foam blender and I'm kind of pouncing it and tapping it to create wispy looking clouds on this A2 panel of blue cardstock. I'm going to use some foam tape behind my window and pop that up in front of the clouds. Should have thought about this before, but I am going to use a stamp that I'm going to curve at the bottom of this oval there. Took me a little bit to get it to curve exactly where I wanted it, but I got it eventually. And now I'm going to pop up a sun from another die set that I'll share soon, and that completes this card as well. The next card is the Rainbow Infinity dies, and this is where the sun came from. You can see it's also got a moon and star and lightning bolts. What I really love are the rainbow dies because you don't have them all attached. You can cut one out at a time. And the reason I like that is because usually with rainbow dies, you have to cut all the rays out of red, all the rays out of orange, all the rays out of yellow, and there's a lot more room for waste if you're not going to make like 10 cards. So for this one, you cut each individual. I'm going to line up the bottoms of the first ray so I can figure out exactly where everything's going to go and where my cloud at the bottom is going to fit. You can see I cut that big cloud out of 2 pieces of white cardstock, stamped on the top one to add a little bit of dimension there, and then we'll cover up the bottom of the rainbow with that big cloud. Then I'm going to put a foam square behind the smaller white cloud and the sun, and then I did cut out the little sparkles out of glitter cardstock, and I'm using a little bit of liquid glue to adhere those down just to add a little bit of sparkle and shine. I love this shape. I usually draw it on cards, so it's nice to have a die for it as well. For this card, we're going to use the Rays of Color Window Fancy die, and I'm going to cut it out of 2 different colors, a pink and kind of a minty blue, and I'm using the purple tape to hold it in place and to keep those rays kind of in order when I take them out of the die so that I can figure out exactly how I want them to go. Just like the other panel die, this creates the rays with a small space in between them. So you actually have 3 colors. You have the mint, the pink, and then the white. And then once that was all put together, I'm going to use the Together Window Fancy die cut out of white cardstock. So I just wanted to see where that fancy die would show the most of the rays in the back. I'm going to use some adhesive to adhere down this panel that I cut the Together window out of onto some clear acetate. So I'm just going to use tape runner to lay it down on some acetate to create a shaker window. Really, really easily, I'm going to color these hands with different colors of Copic markers. So I just grabbed a whole handful of different skin colors to create they're holding hands. So it's 2 different people holding hands together, and it creates this really cool, unique look to the front of the window once they are all colored in. I placed that window panel into my MISTI so that I could place the stamp on there and stamp it in black ink, then flip it over, and I doubled up some foam adhesive to create a square around the opening of the front there. So I don't have to have it all the way down to the bottom because I really just need the top covered up with foam so that the little shaker goodies won't come out. I am removing the protective backing off of those foam lines and then just flipping it over on top of the shaker goodies that I laid on that ray window background there. And for this one, we are going to use the main kit stencil. So there's lots of fun rays and ways to create sun rays or rainbow rays. For this one, I'm creating kind of a sunset look. I have the yellow, orange, and pink. Again, this is another, I get in these moods with color combinations and I use them over and over again. I just love the way that pink, orange, and yellow looks, especially in the summer. So I peel that off. You can see those nice bright white lines there, and I'm going to stamp with the main kit's stamp set. It says here's a birthday in black ink right on top of the ink blending that we did, so I will have to probably double, maybe even triple stamp it to really get it to stand out. But once that's done, I'm going to work on the hug sentiment that I'm going to put underneath. So I have the paper hug dies. I cut them out of a silver glitter cardstock and I'm adhering them with liquid glue down to white fun foam to give them lots of dimension. And I thought that that would be good enough to make them stand out, but you'll see what I had to end up doing. So now I'm going to place this panel, which is 4 by 5 1/4, down to some orangey yellow cardstock. And when you place the hug on it, I felt like it was getting lost. So I was going to do a strip of black, but then that covered up too much of the stencil. So what I did was I'm going to put a little bit of liquid glue behind the foam there, and I cut out the hug in black, and I'm just going to slightly off center it so it looks like it has a little bit of a shadow behind it. And that just tiny bit of black, or that look of a shadow behind it, helps it stand out on the bright colors. So I'm going to add the G to a little bit of black cardstock again, just using some liquid glue. And I like this Thermoweb liquid glue because it gives you time to slide it around a little bit, get it into place to see how much of the black cardstock you want to see. Once that's dry enough that it's not sliding anymore, I'm going to add a little bit of it. I'm just doing dots this time because I don't want too much. I don't want this sliding around on my ink blended background and ruining it. Sometimes the adhesive is liquid enough that it can add water to your water reactive background, and if you slide it, then it will, kind of smear it. So I didn't want to do that, but I did want enough of the liquid glue that it would just really adhere these letters down. And I feel like with that tiny hint of shadow, it stands out much, much better. I don't know about you, but I have tons of friends that live far away from me, and I am so excited to send out some of these cards to them. I'd love to hear what you're excited about this month. Let me know in the comments below if you had a favorite product or card. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon.